I represent the state of Texas, everything is slow. You can tell them I'm here to stay, so bitch, you got to go. Yeah, every city within I represent it. Watching the world off in the night behind something that's tinted. It ain't nothing to show these niggas we one of a kind. That's why I'm representing Texas till I'm in the grind.
What's good? It's your boy 2K here. Shout out to the movement and everybody who's moving with us. Also, if you haven't done so already, man, get your ass over to 3kingsboxing.com and get the latest and greatest. Alright? For this one, I'm going to tell you exactly why Jeff Horn cannot beat Terence Crawford. And typically when I do these breakdown and prediction videos, I'll start them off with giving you guys pros and cons of both fighters. And that'll lead me into my prediction later on in the video. But in this case, man, it's clear cut. I can start this video off giving you my prediction. It's clear cut. There is no hidden meanings or hidden things that I would have had to uncover by watching fights in order to explain to you guys why this fighter will have an advantage over that fighter, right? It's clear cut. If you're comparing and contrasting these two guys' styles, and if you're looking at the difference in skill set, one fighter brings a totally different dynamic into the ring than the other fighter, right? Now, really this video is just going to be focused on Jeff Horn's pros and cons, because he's the guy that you would have to say needs a miracle in this fight. Now, let me start off by saying this. Jeff Horn did show that he has the heart, will, and determination that will allow him to contend with some of the best fighters at 147 when he fought Manny Pacquiao. We're not even going to talk about his first title defense fight against that Australian cat. What was his name? Gary Cockhead. We're not going to talk about him. You know what I'm saying? The fight that really matters, the fight that put Jeff Horn on the map, the fight that had people saying, or has some people saying, that Jeff Horn beats Terence Crawford, is the Manny Pacquiao fight. So we have to give him 100% credit for that fight. Even if you felt like he should have lost, he was still he made a good account of himself in that fight. He was still in that fight. If you had Manny Pacquiao winning, you know what I'm saying, you can't tell me that Manny Pacquiao completely obliterated Jeff Horn like he did Jesse Vargas, or like he did Timothy Bradley in the third fight. That's not what happened. Jeff Horn made it a rough and rugged fight for Manny Pacquiao. And he actually took some things away from Manny Pacquiao that he's used to doing. One of the biggest things that I've seen was Manny Pacquiao wasn't providing the angles that he typically does. Watch the Jeff Horn fight, then go back and watch the fight with Timothy Bradley, the third fight, right? 2 fights prior to Jeff Horn. Check that shit out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Manny Pacquiao was not giving Jeff Horn any of those types of angles that he was giving Timothy Bradley. He was actually standing in front of Jeff Horn a lot of the times, and Jeff Horn kept him on his back foot, you know what I'm saying? In a time where Manny Pacquiao would have needed to apply those angles, he was getting caught up against the ropes. He would spin off the ropes at times, but Jeff Horn did a good job of keeping him there. You see what I'm saying? So, in my opinion, in that fight, Jeff Horn stopped Manny Pacquiao from doing the shit that he's been doing ever since he was like 20 years old. You know what I'm saying? And that's provide those angles with his footwork. So we got to give him credit. I had that fight a draw, but I had no problem with, you know, Jeff Horn taking it. I had no problem with Manny Pacquiao taking it, but I would lean more so to Jeff Horn winning that fight, to be honest with you. So that'll be the precursor to what I'm about to tell y'all next. Let me just go with the pros. Jeff Horn did a good job of moving away from Manny Pacquiao's left hand, man. And I watched the fight, and I'm listening to his cornermen, and they're saying, you know, keep moving to your left, keep circling to your left. You're doing an excellent job. That's the one thing you got to do. And he did that very well in the beginning of the fight. Towards the end, not so much, and I think that fatigue had a lot to do with it. But in the beginning of that fight, where he actually won a lot of the earlier rounds that pretty much put him ahead on 2 of the judges' scorecards to the point where by the end of the fight, he had the win, because I think 2 judges had it 115, 113. Those earlier rounds allowed for those scorecards to be presented, right? And a lot of that had to do with, like I said earlier, the pressure that he applied. He put Manny Pacquiao on his back foot. He stayed away from the left hand, and on top of putting Manny Pacquiao on his back foot, Pacquiao missed a lot of his punches because he's typically used to fighting at mid-range distance, and Pacquiao is usually the guy that's applying the pressure. You know, he's applying a lot of the pressure with his angles, similar to what Lomachenko does. You don't see Lomachenko fighting off his back foot much. You see Lomachenko moving forward and pretty much dancing all around his opponent. That's what Manny Pacquiao does. You know what I'm saying? But he couldn't do that in this fight. He was on his back foot, and that also allowed for him to miss a lot of his punches because he only has a 67-inch reach, and he keeps a lot of his punches short and compact. The one punch I do like from Manny Pacquiao is how he dips right, and then he comes straight down the pipe with that left hand. So it has you thinking that he's going to be going to his right side, so you kind of move directly into Manny Pacquiao's straight left hand. I love that shot. And to be quite honest, he only threw that shit like once or twice in the fight with Jeff Horn. It's another thing that was missing there. But for the most part, Manny likes to keep his punches short and compact, and that allows him to have more power on his shots. That's why he was knocking a lot of cats out. Besides the fact of, you know, the juicing thing that a lot of people believe he was on. Besides all of that, but earlier in his days when, you know, we weren't thinking he was juicing, he was still knocking cats out the same way with those short, compact shots. Jeff Horn did an excellent job of getting away from that. He did an excellent job of applying pressure. He has a good lead right hand. I don't hear a lot of people talking about Jeff Horn's straight right hand. One thing that he does, he likes to dip to his left, kind of feint, and then he'll come back with a straight right hand right down the pipe, and it's money. Also, let me compare this to basketball. A lot of my basketball heads. You know, my biggest asset in hooping, besides my defense, is my handles. I got killer handles, man. You know what I'm saying? I've been handling that rock since I was 4 years old. And even though I dribble extremely fast, there's particular moves that I have where I'm lightning fast with them. You know what I'm saying? The reason why I use that analogy is with Jeff Horn. He's not extremely fast, but when he's feinting and then comes back up top with that straight right hand, he's lightning fast with it. And he's almost money with it every single time. I mean, that's one of the sequences I was hitting Manny Pacquiao at will when they fought, right? Also, he can feint like he's gonna go to the top, and then he'll bring his straight right hand back down to the body. He's lightning fast with that as well. And it's excellent, and it's on the money. He puts it right in the solar plexus. You know what I'm saying? So he does a very good job with varying what he does with that straight right hand. And that was a problem that Manny Pacquiao was having in that fight, besides of the fact that he was getting thrown all around the ring, getting completely, out-muscled and bullied, almost for 12 rounds anyway, right? And that leads into the fact that he's a roughhouse type of fighter. See, against these smaller guys, the smaller fighters are going to have trouble trying to get around the roughhouse tactics and the high pressure bully mentality of Jeff Horn. And case in point, when Jeff Horn had Manny Pacquiao up against them ropes, Pacquiao wanted to spin off those ropes, and he did a lot of those times, but he was stuck there because Jeff Horn would put his entire body on Manny Pacquiao, and then he would attack the body on top of that. When you attack the body like that, it keeps your opponent stagnated, right? It takes a lot of the wind out of the lungs. So he's not going to want to make any quick and subtle movements. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you do when you spin off the ropes. It's a quick movement, right? But when you get hit to the body, man, that saps your motherfucking air. So you don't have the lung capacity to make that quick movement, right? And that's what he was doing against Manny Pacquiao up against those ropes. And that's how he would keep him there. It was the first thing he would do. As soon as he had Manny on the ropes, he'd go straight to the body. You know what I'm saying? Excellent way to keep that quick-footed fighter directly in front of you, especially when you got his back up against the ropes, right? And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that he arguably has the biggest heart of the contenders at 147. Let's take a trip to that 9th round real quick. Now, this is a fight where if you ask an Australian, Jeff Horn was winning at that time like 6 rounds to 2. You know what I'm saying? 5 rounds to 3, right? But in that 9th round, Manny Pacquiao finally started to apply the fucking angles that he was supposed to apply. He was still a little wild in that fight. And that's another thing, man. I never seen Manny Pacquiao be so wild while standing directly in front of his opponent. I've never seen that from Manny Pacquiao. You know what I'm saying? Maybe when he was 17 years old, fighting in the Philippines, and those 2 knockout losses that he had early in his career. And there's footage on those fights, by the way. Manny Pacquiao was standing in front of those 2 guys. You know what I'm saying? That's probably the last time I've seen Manny Pacquiao not apply angles the way that he is used to doing as he became one of the more talented fighters in the sport, right? That was the last time I seen him do that. And he, for some reason, this motherfucker had a flashback of being a 17-year-old kid prize fighting in the Philippines against Jeff Horn. But in that 9th round, he went back to the Manny Pacquiao that's going to put him in the Hall of Fame. And that's why he completely obliterated Jeff Horn in that 9th round. He was hitting him with right hands, the straight left hand down the pipe. You know, that punch that I really liked so much from him. He was moving side to side like crazy. He was more so on his toes a lot more than he was the previous 8 rounds of the fight, right? Instead of backing up, he's on his toes, bouncing from left to right. He had Jeff Horn hurt early in the fight, and it wasn't with a left hand, it was with a right, early in the round. And it was with a right hand, not a left hand. And that's what led to Jeff Horn just basically moving around the ring trying to survive in that round. You know what I'm saying? But that leads me to Jeff Horn's heart. As much as Manny Pacquiao was hurting this dude, and he landed more rights and lefts throughout that round. And it got to the point where Manny Pacquiao had to collect himself because he was getting a little tired trying to go for the kill. You know what I'm saying? Now, in my opinion, if Manny was a little bit smarter, and that's one of the things that, it's one of my knocks on Manny Pacquiao. He's not a smart fighter. You know what I'm saying? He's a very athletically gifted fighter, but he's not 100% a smart fighter. His ring IQ and his intelligence in the ring was one of the things that always hurt him against boxers. You know what I'm saying? That's why Floyd Mayweather was able to beat him so fucking easily. That's why Tim Bradley, in my opinion, in the first fight, he did what he did. You know what I'm saying? That's why Eric Morales was able to do what he did when they fought. So his intelligence level or his ring IQ is what typically hurt Manny Pacquiao in his career against boxers. Okay? Now, if he would have been a little bit more smart in that 9th round, he would have been able to pace himself a lot better. He would have been able to have better punch placement even while being fatigued. And he could have possibly stopped Jeff Horn. But going for the kill like that sapped his stamina, and it allowed Jeff Horn to have enough heart, will, and determination to survive in that round. Then he came back, you know, in the remaining 3 rounds and actually won 2 out of the remaining 3. Jeff Horn did. That's arguably anyway. He won 2 out of the remaining 3. So his heart, will, and determination, in my opinion, will be a major factor in this fight, right? As I think Terence Crawford wins his fight, I think Jeff Horn will display that he has nothing to lose, you know, with the exception of his WBO title. But it's like him coming into the fight with nothing to lose because he understands he's fighting a heavily skilled fighter. I mean, when we're looking at the skill sets, he's completely overmatched. You know what I'm saying? It's like the fucking you know, Golden State Warriors playing the Atlanta Hawks. You know what I'm saying? The best team in the motherfucking in the NBA playing possibly one of the worst skilled teams in the NBA, right? It's like that. It's what fucking Teddy Atlas said. You know what I'm saying? I think Teddy Atlas said something along the lines of, it's like a high school football team trying to beat the Patriots. You know what I'm saying? It's not gonna happen. And Jeff Horn, as much as he has confidence in himself and his team, you got to understand reality, right? They understand what this fight is about and the disadvantages that they have in this fight. But at the same time, as a fighter, you never concede to defeat before you get in the ring. And that's the good thing that Jeff Horn is doing right now. He's trying to tell you guys, hey, I got the utmost confidence in myself, just like I did going into the fight with Manny Pacquiao, right? So you got to respect that shit 100%. He's not conceding to defeat before he actually loses to Terence Crawford. Now, let's get into why, in my opinion, that's going to happen. And it's going to happen in possibly embarrassing fashion. Jeff Horn possibly has the worst footwork of the contenders at 147 pounds. The guy squares up at times because he lunges with his punches. And he also can be seen squaring up even when he's applying pressure, right? When he was coming forward on Manny Pacquiao, dude, his feet were literally parallel to one another, right? Also, when he lunges with his shots, he's parallel. His feet are parallel to one another. The problem with that is when your opponent is looking to counterpunch you, when he's already read some of the shit that you do, and Jeff Horn fights in patterns like a motherfucker. He's a bit unorthodox, but his patterns are very easy to see. He does some of the same shit every single time. And when your opponent is able to adjust and start learning how to time some of the things that you do, time your patterns, and you're squared up, you're liable to get knocked the fuck down when you're countered, right? Manny Pacquiao was trying to counter Jeff Horn, and go back and watch that fight. The fact that he would be on his back foot would put him out of range for counters. Now, he did hit him. He did counter him a lot of the time, but more so, he missed with his counters. You know what I'm saying? And that's because he would be on his back foot. Terence Crawford has the reach advantage in this fight. And they're virtually the same height. I think Jeff Horn has 1 inch height advantage on Terence Crawford. But Terence Crawford has a 2 inch reach advantage. Also, if you look at Terence Crawford against John Molina Jr., another guy that was applying relentless pressure the entire fight. And then if you look at Terence Crawford versus Victor Postol, and I say that fight because that fight is probably the best display of Terence Crawford fighting on his back foot in his entire career. If you look at those two fights, Terence Crawford is a master at figuring out what your pattern is and countering you once he's figured out those patterns, right? That's going to be a problem for Jeff Horn squaring up like that. And he also does his dumbass shimmy. This shit is stupid as fuck. He's sitting there with his hands low, and he's kind of shimmying from left to right with his fucking feet squared up. And he'll be at mid-range distance. Just enough distance for Terence Crawford to hit this motherfucker with a straight left hand. Because I expect Terence to be in the southpaw position in this fight a lot of the time. Just enough for him to hit him with a straight left hand, right? And roll to his right, which is Jeff Horn's left. And get out of range. He better not do that stupid ass shimmy he was doing against Manny Pacquiao against Terence Crawford. Man, he gonna hit this motherfucker so quick and circle to his right, Jeff Horn's not gonna know what's happened. You know what I'm saying? So, one thing that I hope Jeff Horn's trainers were doing in this fight, besides the fact that, you know, they came out and said, oh, we're gonna apply relentless pressure, so much pressure, he's not gonna know how to get me off of him. Okay, that's fine, and that's probably the best way to fight Terence Crawford, because you can't outbox him, right? Also, you don't even have a better inside game than Terence Crawford does. So, that'll probably be the best way to do it. That's the best plan for a win for Jeff Horn. But one thing that I hope that they worked on is his footwork. If he's going to apply pressure, he's going to have to provide angles. Jeff Horn can apply subtle angles. He was doing it against Manny Pacquiao, but he's not effective with it. He's more effective just coming forward. And that's going to play directly into Terence Crawford's hands, right? So hopefully they worked on his footwork and had him applying different angles and basically trying to apply effective aggression through applying angles against Terence Crawford. That shit's going to be key. Also in several rounds, man, against Manny Pacquiao, Jeff Horn is applying pressure with his hands completely down. Hands completely down again. It'll be a situation where it'll be a counter punch fest for Terence Crawford. A counter punch fest at mid-range distance, and him being able to get out of harm's way before Jeff Horn could even fucking react to it. You know what I'm saying? If he's doing that shit, right? He almost never brings his hands home either, man. When he's coming forward and he's on the attack, he'll throw a punch and leave his arm extended, or he'll bring it back to his midsection, leaving his face wide open again for another counter punch. And that's how Manny Pacquiao was actually getting his shots in whenever he was at mid-range or close distance. More so when Jeff Horn was at close distance, because he would be applying that pressure and getting to Manny Pacquiao. And before Manny Pacquiao took that step back to get out of the inside range, he would throw a counter punch and land on Jeff Horn, right? Man, Terence Crawford is going to do that. And I'll even add to it, I could see Terence Crawford doubling up, countering, and then following up on that, and then getting out of range. That's how fast Terence Crawford is. You know what I'm saying? So he's got to bring his fucking hands back. And he can't be sloppy going for the kill. Let's say Jeff Horn hits Terence Crawford with a shot coming in. And then he might have in his head that Terence Crawford's hurt. And I'll get to this point in a minute. He might have in his head, oh, Terence Crawford's hurt, I'm going for the kill. Go back and look at that Manny Pacquiao fight. He was completely sloppy going in for the kill. Completely sloppy. Opportunities like a motherfucker. Endless opportunities for counter punches, man. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was sitting there counting how many times Jeff Horn could have been countered in that exchange. You see what I'm saying? He can't do that against this particular type of fighter, right? Also, shout out to my man C-Bone. I had seen this before, but I'm going to go ahead and give him credit because he mentioned it before I did on our podcast we do every Wednesday nights over at Three Kings Boxing YouTube channel. When Jeff Horn throws a punch, this dude, what I like to call, he punches face first. And what I mean by that is he leans his fucking whole head forward before he throws his punch. Again, counter punch fest. Before this dude probably even gets that punch off, to measure it, right? To measure it in order to get it to go to the point on Terence Crawford in which he's aiming at, he's gonna get countered, especially not having the reach advantage in this fight. That is an amateurish mistake, and that's something that is supposed to be corrected when you're a young fighter. When you're fighting as a teenager, you're supposed to correct a guy from basically doing things in the ring. Let me say this. From basically doing bad habits before he throws a punch, right? If you have an excellent trainer, he's going to notice something like that. He's going to be like, all right, fam, look, you can't put your face first and then throw the punch. You can't do that, right? I'll talk about another fighter that does something before he throws punches that his trainer should have caught. Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz likes to twist his right hand before he throws a punch. It could either be a jab or it could be a straight right hand. And whatever he's leading with, he twists his fucking right hand. And he may twist it a couple of times before he throws a punch. And if you're his opponent, you start to recognize that pattern. Shit, I recognize it. I'm not even in the fucking ring. I'm watching on television. You see what I'm saying? So that's something that Santa Cruz's trainer should have already corrected. And this is something that Jeff Horn's trainer should have corrected. But this is a major flaw because he's putting his fucking face in danger of a counterpunch, man. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that he's definitely gonna have to get rid of, man. And a lot of people talk about the size differential. You know, Manny Pacquiao, y'all do understand that Manny Pacquiao fought in his career as low as light flyweight, right? For you dumb motherfuckers out there, light flyweight is 108 pounds. That's the limit, right? But I even do you one better. Typically, you don't peak, you know, into being, I don't want to say peak, but you don't actually come into being a grown man until you're about 24, 25 years old. That's when you stop growing and shit. That's when you really at your peak as a grown man, right? You've made that transition from being a teenager, even though 21 to 24 you're not a teenager, but you've really come into yourself as a man, right? You transitioned. 24, 25 years old. When Manny Pacquiao was that age, that's when he fought Marco Antonio Barrera, right? Where was he at? Featherweight, 126 pounds. So Manny Pacquiao is a very small guy, fellas. Y'all gotta understand that. Terence Crawford's home division is 135, right? Another thing I want you guys to understand is this. In boxing, and I've given you guys this story before, you know, all my cats that follow the channel and subscribe and have been following from the beginning, I've given you this story before. When I walked into the gym, not for the first time, this is actually the second time that I fought in the amateurs. I had 2 different stints as an amateur fighter. The second time I fought in the amateurs, I weighed about 185 pounds. This is when I started packing on muscle and shit, right? I weighed about 185 pounds. My trainer was like, yeah, you about 185, cool. What had you fight at junior middleweight? And then amateur boxing, junior middleweight is 152 pounds. You know what I'm saying? That's where they wanted me to go. That's several weight classes below where I could have actually fought at. They could have had me fighting at middleweight or super middleweight. I could have fought at light heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? But they make it to where you're several weight divisions below where you could actually fight comfortably at. This is typical in boxing. Look at Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn in the weigh-in, he weighed in at 148. Nigga had to get naked and shit like he getting ready to do a porno flick. You know what I'm saying? Before he actually made 147. Jeff Horn is naturally a much bigger guy. He could probably fight at middleweight within the 160 pound limit. Actually, I was listening to the Australian broadcast for the Manny Pacquiao fight, and apparently they said he rehydrated to the 160s. He's probably going to rehydrate to the 160s for this fight, right? So Jeff Horn can probably fight realistically at middleweight. His walk around weight is probably what mine was, you know what I'm saying, 11 years ago when I went back to the amateur circuit, right? That's what this is about Terence Crawford. While his home division was 135, we saw on social media not too long ago Terence Crawford weigh himself, and he put the goddamn scale on Instagram, I believe it was, and he weighed in at like 180 plus pounds. Basically trying to tell you guys, hey, I'm a big guy. I could fight at welterweight. That's comfortable. You see what I'm saying? So Manny Pacquiao, while he's 5'5", 5'5", with a 67-inch reach, and even as a grown man fought at 126 pounds, but fought as low as 108, Terence Crawford is 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. His home division is 135, but his walk-around weight is 180 plus. How much bigger do you think Jeff Horn really is? That's the question you need to think about, right? Let me go into the last couple of cons that I got on Jeff Horn, and then I'm gonna wrap it up, man. With the relentless pressure that Jeff Horn was applying to Manny Pacquiao, he got tired early. Now, this goes back into his heart, will, and determination. He kept up the pace, right? But his fatigue was making him even more susceptible to counterpunches. His fatigue didn't allow him to keep his hands up, right? His fatigue allowed him to be even more squared up at times. His fatigue allowed him to be wide open, pretty much the head and to the body. And that was by round 4. You could see his mouth was wide open. And then by round 9, he almost got knocked out because of his fatigue, right? Look at his legs in round 9. And this is a much smaller fighter that almost knocked him out, right? Also, Jeff Horn has scar tissue, that right eye. You think Terence Crawford ain't gonna be targeting that right eye? One thing I want you guys to know about Crawford, man, and I've been saying this shit for a minute on my channel. Terence Crawford is quite possibly the smartest fighter in boxing, with the absence of Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward. Even when those two were still fighting, I was telling you cats that Terence Crawford is within the upper echelon of boxing when it comes to ring IQ and intelligence. I told you cats that years ago, right? My channel is like 2 years old, but you know what the fuck I mean. Since the beginning of this channel. You know what I'm saying? I've been telling you cats that. And he's been showing it time and time and time again. The Victor Postal fight, that should have been a breakthrough for you guys. Because a lot of motherfuckers, including myself, thought that that fight was going to be close. I had Terence Crawford beating Victor Postal. But I sure as hell did not have him beating Postal 120 to 105. You know what I'm saying? Like a straight up basketball score. A blowout. I did not have Terence Crawford beating him 12 rounds to 0 with 3 knockdowns. I didn't see that. I thought Crawford would beat him, 116, 112, possibly 117, 111. I had Postal winning 3 to 4 rounds, but he couldn't get nothing. That's because Terence Crawford knew exactly what he had to do in the fight. Not only is this guy smart as fuck, but he can actually apply what his ring IQ wants him to do. His body is able to do what his brain wants him to do, fam. Do you understand how special that is? That's a special fucking fighter, right? Also, Terence Crawford is a switch hitter. I mentioned this many times, and what I'm about to say next, I've mentioned many times. When you're fighting a switch hitter, you have to train in one training camp for 2 fighters. You got to bring in guys that are fucking southpaws, and you got to bring in guys that are orthodox fighters. Your training team has to game plan for 2 different styles. When they come up with a game plan, they got to be like, okay, they have to add this this extra situation in. Yeah, do this and this and this. But then if he fights southpaw, if he decides to turn southpaw, you got to know you got to do this. So that fighter's going in the ring like, all right, this is what I got to do. This is the game plan I got to execute. But I also got to remember the plan B if he decides to switch on me. So typically that fighter has to go in the ring with 2 game plans. Now that's not something that is abnormal, right? I always say you should have a plan A, B, C, and D. But the difference is you're having those plans because what you're doing initially is not working for you, right? And it's only for one style of fighter. See, this becomes exponential now because he has to have a plan A, but then he has to have a plan A1 and a plan A2 because the guy can switch. And then you have a plan B1, B2, plan C1, C2, instead of just having plan A, B, and C. So now it's exponential because this guy's a switch hitter. And the reason why this matters so much is because Terence Crawford has mastered his own style out of both stances. There's plenty of other switch hitters in the game. You know what I'm saying? Hank Lundy's a switch hitter. But Hank Lundy hasn't mastered his style at both stances. He hasn't. So you don't really have to game plan that hard against a Hank Lundy, right? He hasn't mastered both positions. But Terence Crawford has, fam. He could fight you at orthodox just as well as he could fight you at southpaw. What was another fighter recently that was able to do that? That's right, Andre Ward. That's why guys can beat the guy, man. Brings too much of a dynamic into the ring. And it's hard to figure out what the fuck he's gonna do next. You see what I'm saying? The fact that Terence Crawford is so smart. The fact that he's so skilled. The fact that he brings too much of a dynamic into the ring. The fact that Jeff Horn has already relegated himself to being a one-dimensional fighter. He's already saying that he's got to be one-dimensional. He told us, hey, I'm about to apply pressure and make it to where he can't keep me off of him. Because I can't outbox him, right? I can't outthink him. I don't have the better skill set. So I got to bully him. I got to do to him what I did to Manny Pacquiao. Possibly cut him twice with headbutts, right? Put my forearm in his face. Push him up against the ropes. Elbow him a bit here and there. That's the only way I can beat this guy. Sort of like Orlando Salido, what he did to Vasyl Lomachenko. That's the only way I can beat this guy. The difference is Vasyl Lomachenko allowed it to happen. I don't think Terence Crawford allows this to happen, guys. Too smart of a fighter. I got Terence Crawford by obliteration. You know what I'm saying? One thing I want to say is this. I think this fight will be competitive for 2 rounds, maybe 3 rounds tops. And the reason for that is because Terence Crawford is a guy, while he does watch film and while he does have a game plan before he goes in, he likes to call audibles. Just like in football. You can have a play, but when you get to that line of scrimmage, motherfuckers will call audibles. Who's a master at doing that? Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning was a master at calling audibles. Even though they have a play, the motherfucker will call about 6-7 audibles before they actually start the play. You know what I'm saying? That's Terence Crawford. That's what he does in the ring. He'll have a game plan, but then as the fight wears on, he'll start calling audibles. Because he'll start to see what you're doing. He'll know your patterns and he'll adjust. And he's smart enough to be able to adjust and still win in impressive fashion. Look at Felix Diaz. Look at that fight. The only Dominican gold medalist. The guy that there's nothing to argue about here. I mean, he beat Lamont Peterson. He beat him. Right? One of the most highly skilled amateurs and one of the most highly skilled fighters from 140 to 147 before he fought Terence Crawford. Crawford obliterated this kid. So much so that he caused him to lose his last fight. He's not the same fighter anymore. Right? The only way Jeff Horn can win this fight is a puncher's chance, in my opinion. The pressure will be too much for Terence Crawford, and 147 pounds would be too much for Terence Crawford. He won't be able to take the shots. That's the only way Jeff Horn beats Terence Crawford, in my opinion. If Jeff Horn hits him and it does nothing for Terence Crawford, because he will get hit in this fight. Everybody gets hit in a fight, right? If he hits this guy and Terence Crawford doesn't react in a way that tells us that he can't take the shots at 147, fight is over. At the end of the day, the story of this fight should read, Terence Crawford was able to tame the pressure of Jeff Horn by being first with his jab and having a counterpunch festival with all the openings Jeff Horn allowed him to create. Also, the story should read, while Jeff Horn had the heart, will, and determination to keep himself upright, his corner thought he had enough. YouTube, do what you do in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this fight, but be real. It's real talk for real fans. 1.